So a very good morning to you. You're very welcome to today's Signpost webinar. We're coming to you from very wet and windy west of Ireland here today, but I hope you're all keeping safe and well. So as the country experiences one of the most serious energy crises in decades, and this coupled with the threat posed by climate change, as a country, we need to accelerate our transition to a fossil-free economy, fuel-free economy. And for Ireland, the benefits are clear: energy and food security, the reduced risk of catastrophic impacts on climate change from our climate, and a more sustainable society. And one community that is taking on the challenge head on is the West Kerry Dairy Farmers Sustainable Energy Community, whose aim is to build a resilient and energy efficient farming community by exploiting renewable energy sources, reducing costs and their carbon emissions. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ruth Buggie, who is Programme Manager with the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, looking after the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, and also Dinny Galvin, who is a member of the West Kerry SEC. And we're going to be discussing how sustainable energy communities can start to tackle agricultural emissions and also renewable energy. And we're delighted also to be joined by Barry Caslin, who is an energy specialist and rural development specialist with Teagasc. Ruth, maybe just if you could introduce the program to us and gives an overview and maybe the type of work that you're doing. You're working with communities across the country through your various representatives in Ireland. Maybe you could just give us an overview of the program.
Of course, that's no problem at all. So certainly we've been running this program since 2015. It came out of an EU research project, and it was about really how we could empower communities to showcase future energy and climate targets. And it's grown into a network now of almost 700 communities across Ireland. So it's a hugely rewarding program to be part of, and to see the communities embrace the opportunities and the ambition that they demonstrate every day.
Thanks, Ruth. And Dinny, good morning to you.
Good morning. Yes, good morning to everybody. Yes.
What's the weather like down there this morning, Dinny?
Weather is wild and wet and windy in West Kerry this morning. Yes, very much so.
So it's no accident. They call it the wild Atlantic way. So, and Barry, you're going to help us with the questions a little later on. Barry, you have a lot of experience in this area. So, I mean, Barry, maybe you could just give us a picture of where things are at in terms of renewable energy at a farm level. I know that there is some frustration there amongst farmers that they're creating electricity on their farms, of maybe not getting recognition for it in terms of the total emissions.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And yeah, there's a major recognition now that we have to be looking at the area of renewable energy. There's also a recognition as well that the way we produce energy has to change. We have to decarbonize, and the way we consume energy is going to have to change quite a bit. So I think we have a few very intensive agricultural sectors in terms of energy use, and it'd mainly be the pig, the poultry, horticulture sector, and of course the dairy sector. Beef and sheep wouldn't use that much, but still they have a potential to get involved in energy generation. So they could be using their land for, it could be wind turbine projects, it could be solar PV projects, because renewables is going to need a lot of land, Mark. It's going to need a lot of, I suppose, supports and policy instruments to make it all happen. So there's nothing new about renewables either. We've seen it all over the world. We've seen it, great advancements right across Europe, where, wind turbines, solar PV, there's been major advancements there in terms of renewable technologies and the adoption of them. But it does require policy. But now we have the added drive that we have high energy prices, and that's really putting a major push in terms of people looking at technologies such as solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, looking at variable speed drives in the milking parlour, changing their lighting systems to the likes of LED lighting. And of course, there's supports there from the likes of SEAI at the moment for biomass boilers, which is a support scheme for renewable heat. So, you can buy in wood chip at probably around 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Whereas if you're using kerosene, to take that example of a fossil fuel, that's costing you over 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's nearly a third of the price using the wood chip. And of course, you're getting the support there through the support mechanism, which is the support scheme for renewable heat. So I think we are going to see a major a major shift to decarbonisation and farmers adopting these technologies.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the energy prices have really focused people's minds. And I know, Ruth, you were saying off air that the level of interest in the schemes offered by SEI has really rocketed, which is good, a good thing to see, I suppose. So Ruth, maybe if we could ask you to share your screen with us. You're going to give us a presentation, and I know, Dinny, you have some slides to share with us as well afterwards. And then what we will do is take questions and answers from the audience. So please do use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Today's session will be recorded and will be available on the Teagasc YouTube channel, as well as the presentations on the actual Teagasc website as well. So Ruth, if we hand over to you, and we will pick up on any questions at the end then.
Great. Many thanks, Mark. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. So I'm proposing to cover off on a high level overview of the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, talk about how we support communities, the various roles communities play in the energy transition. And then, because of the level of interest and from recent events we've attended, we know solar is obviously the area of most interest. So I just wanted to put together a brief overview of the different ways solar can be supported. And a lot has happened in the last couple of months. So just a bit of an update there as well. So then just moving across onto the sustainable energy community, we have defined this as a community, as a group of people who work together to develop a sustainable energy system for the benefit of the community. And it's about being energy efficient first, so avoiding unnecessary energy use, then looking for renewable options where feasible, and then looking at smart energy solutions. So it can be as small as a street and as large as a county or even a region, and it can be communities can be based on either shared location or shared interest, but it cannot just be a group of businesses coming together. So in the case of Dinny's case study that you're going to hear this morning, Dinny looked at their own energy use within the homes of the farmers involved, their transport, and any other energy that they had influence over as a group. So it's about more than just business energy use. We have business programs that can support that. This is trying to look at bringing as much people together and exerting as much influence where we have it about changing how energy is used locally. So that's really where it comes from. We started out as to engage and enable the energy citizen under the Energy White Paper in 2015. There is a lot of emerging and current energy policy from Europe around how we develop citizen energy communities, what renewable energy communities mean and what their structures should be, and then how we activate energy citizens. So a lot of this is about empowerment, and we've been at this for quite a while, so hopefully we can share some of those learnings today. So then having a look at how we support communities and what that structure looks like. So we talk about a learn, plan, do staged process. So initially communities can join the network. It's a very low entry requirement. It's just a group of people who want to come together. It's a peer learning network. It's just about sharing experiences and finding out from others. You're provided with a mentor at that stage who can guide you through whatever interests you have and what different supports you may want to avail of. So it's about 700 communities in that network now. We have a target to reach 1,500 SECs by 2030. So it's quite an ambitious plan, but we're very happy with the level of growth that we're seeing at the moment. The next stage communities can choose to step into is to participate in developing an energy master plan. So we have about 200 communities in this stage that have either done an energy master plan or are in the process of developing one. And this is about identifying what the baseline energy use is within their own community and identifying what project opportunities there might be. So this is about seeing where the effort is best spent, see what opportunities exist. Every community has particular challenges, but they also have particular opportunities, and this helps identify it. We provide 100% of the support to do the energy master plan. Then the next stage from that energy master plan is saying, well, now that we can see what we can do, how do we do it? So we have a significant grant there called the Community Energy Grant. This year it's about 38 million euro. So it will leverage about 100 million euro worth of works as it happens. And it's trying to bring together the not-for-profit aspect of a community, some households in a community, and commercial and businesses within a community into a single project. It works well in some areas, it works a little bit less well in others. There's still a co-funding challenge on that due stage for a lot of the not-for-profit communities that makes it quite difficult. So we also have the Better Energy Home Scheme, warmer homes and one-stop shops that householders within the community can be referred into. And then we have the Community Renewable Electricity Support Scheme that can also be something the communities want to participate in. So there's a lot there, but again, it's very much at the speed the community wishes to proceed at. It's not a legal definition when you're joining the network. It is just an expression of interest to find out more. It's a newsletter, it's a couple of online meetings, it's a mentor, and then as you want to proceed, the support is there to do that. So across those programs of the do stages, the information we have really is about setting it out as the sustainable energy communities is kind of the broad framework from which communities start. When they get into that community energy grant, there's a panel of project coordinators to deliver those larger projects. On renewable energy communities, over the last number of years, there's been a lot of changes about embedding communities into how renewable electricity is generated. And that program now has a specific auction category just for community-led projects. We have a panel of trusted advisors, the ability to support feasibility studies and early stage grant support of about 80% of the costs for those pre-construction costs of a project. So that's really for projects that are between 500 kilowatts and 5 megawatts. I think from the conversations we've had and from today's event, it'd be great to hear if the long history of co-ops within the agricultural sector could lead to some successful projects into that category. And then within all of the renewable electricity projects, both the commercial and the community-led ones, there is a requirement for a community benefit fund to be established. And that equates to €2 for every megawatt hour of electricity that is generated by the project. And the intent there is that this fund is available for the community to undertake various projects of interest that align with sustainable development goals, and also for wind projects to pay a near neighbour payment for homes that are close to those. But between onshore and offshore projects, it's going to amount to funds of about €1.5 to €2 billion over the next 30 years. So it's a very significant amount of money that communities will have access to realise their ambitions at a community level and hopefully their climate ambitions. The picture here is a group water scheme, and they installed solar PV on the water treatment plant, and they reduced their energy costs by 70%. So they had 600 connections on their group water scheme, and they had a significant sinking fund that helped co-finance that. They got some funding from the Better Energy Communities grant to install it, and are now have applied to the grid for an assessment to connect a large-scale renewable electricity project from that. So it's a really good example of how a cooperative, an existing structure, could be leveraged to build a project of enduring benefit for a wide group of people. So how communities operate in this space and the role is very varied depending on their interests and the nature of the time they have and the skills that they have. So the real skill for communities is how they engage the wider community in this conversation. So we talk about having the opportunity to discuss all energy interests and, I suppose, have the conversation before there's a project on the doorstep that people either want or don't want. They can identify a committee to lead actions to realise those climate ambitions. They typically host events and participate or can deliver energy training. They work to develop the energy master plan. They recruit homes and businesses for the audits. They can communicate the results back of the energy master plan and develop the do stage of options. So Dinny has the story of his do actions, and it really is a great story to hear. And it's a real pleasure to have met him a number of years ago and was lucky enough to sit next to him at a lunch. And hopefully some of what we chatted about has now been realised. So when we talk about then moving on to businesses and energy and solar, I just wanted to do a quick overview of what's there for businesses in this space. So SMEs can get a voucher of €2,000 to get an energy audit. So you have to spend about €10,000 per energy per year, which unfortunately for most people really won't be a difficult thing with the rise in energy prices. So it does require a CRO number, but there's a link there and you're all going to get the presentation. So to go in there, there's also capital grants. Barry referenced the support scheme for renewable heat, community energy grant that I've spoken about, Microgen, which I will talk about, and then the accelerated capital allowance and the opportunity to claim back the costs in 1 year instead of 8 years for products that are bought from that list. We have 24 training modules about energy for businesses, and there's a lot in there that's really useful. There are a combination of short videos, and they typically take between a half an hour and 2 hours, and you can just dip in and out. It's totally free, but it's there. It can help you understand your energy bill, your choices, how to change suppliers, how to make energy savings within the business. We also offer expert advice. So we provide energy management training, and then there's an optional follow-up call with an energy advisor, and you can register for the workshops there. We also have a host of different events and networking opportunities as well. So there's a lot of supports there for businesses that might be of help, particularly at this very challenging time. So in terms of solar PV resources, the conditional planning exemptions for solar PV, I believe, were issued yesterday to be signed by into law next week. So hopefully that'll get the go ahead. So that exempts a lot of the smaller scale solar projects from having to get planning permission. So you're already exempt up to 12 square meters for domestic, but anything over that, even if it was small scale, needed planning. So that will go a long way to making it a lot easier to participate. We've a lot of online guides and tools, and I've just put a few examples up there. And from a government perspective, the small scale generation consultation, so this is for projects between 50 kilowatts and 500 kilowatts, is currently open. It's open until the 13th of October. It was extended by 2 weeks earlier this week. So if you've got feedback and you want to input into that, that's the larger scale than the microgen, and it's not as big as commercial generation, but it could be an area where a group of farmers might see an opportunity to develop projects at that scale and to make sure that your voices are heard. What I'd say on consultation is some of the times they can be quite difficult to access or to even understand all that's being said, but you can respond to just sections that are relevant to yourself. You don't have to do a response to the whole document. We've guides there for community projects. We've a toolkit around solar PV that shows likely paybacks, understanding the process. There's a really good solar guide for businesses, and it shows what the likely return is, the differences in orientation, and really useful to have a scan through that before you consider it, just understanding your own electricity use demand profile and seeing if the technology is the right fit for yourself. The more you can use yourself, the more effective and efficient the solution is, and far more cost effective as well. If you're interested in your own home, there is a payback calculator for domestic solar PV, but I think with the current challenges, the rates on that are changing on nearly a daily basis. Then we are looking at the non-domestic microgen grant, which was launched in the last week. So this effectively provides the same grant for non-domestic microgen as was available for homes up until that. So you can obviously still get the homes one. So the maximum is €2,400 for the installation of solar PV on businesses, farms, schools, community centres, or other non-profit organisations. If you're installing a panel that has a peak production in a lab as tested of 1 kilowatt, the grant is €900, and then it maxes out at 4 kilowatt peak at €2,400. You can still install up to 6 kilowatts under this scheme, but the grant is capped at €2,400. So then looking at what is there. So there's, in addition to the grant, there's also what's called a clean export guarantee. So this is where your supplier will pay you for that export. So a sample I took about a month ago, electricity were offering 14 cents for the electricity you were spilling back to the grid. Energy were offering 18 cents and Flow Gas were offering 20 cents. And there's a tax exemption for this of up to €200. For installs bigger than 6 kilowatts, so this is 6 kilowatts to 50 kilowatts, there is what's called a clean export premium feed-in tariff, and it's set at 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. It is capped at 80% of the usage, but it will reduce from 2024 by $0.01 every year. So the sooner you get in, the more likely you are to get a return fast. But at the same time, with the rise and increase in electricity prices, the payback is very quick. So this is something I put together to try and understand all the different types of electricity generation that's been spoken about and all the different programs, because I couldn't find anywhere that I could see them all in one space. So this was trying to say, this is what was there. This is the microgen domestic and non-domestic. It's for up to 6 kilowatts in size. There's a capital grant, and then you get your guarantee on the market rate from your supplier. And each supplier sets their own, and you can only get paid by the supplier who supplies you. You can't have one supplier that gives you electricity and you can't sell it to a different one. Then the microgen 2, so this is the 6 kilowatts to 50 kilowatts. So at the moment there is no capital grant and there isn't one planned, and that has a 13.5 cent kilowatt premium per kilowatt hour. And again, that's the one that's going to drop 1 cent per year after next year, after 2024. Small scale generation then is 50 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts. And that's out for consultation. So how will that model work? So it's not just a case of the agricultural sector finding it difficult to access the grid to generate. It hasn't been possible for pretty much anyone to sell into the grid. So this is being developed, and that's the one that if you have an opinion on, to consider providing a response. Then we talk about community projects, so community res. So they're typically between 500 kilowatts and 5 megawatts, and they have their own auction category. And then finally, there's the large scale res. So that's the large developers, large solar and wind at the moment, but it will open up to other technologies next year. And that's what's going to deliver the bulk of our targets of 80% renewables by 2030. But we need all of this in the system as well. So that was just a way of trying to show it. It might make sense, it might not. But I know solar was certainly the area of most interest in recent events we've participated in. So happy to take any questions, but I think you'll enjoy Dinny's story, and I'll revert back to Mark. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ruth. I mean, that's an excellent graphic. It really pulls it all together. I know from talking to people, there's a feeling out there from some people anyway that the Microgen 2, that second grouping, that's there should be some sort of supports there to try and pump prime that, given that there's huge shed space available across the country. I think that is, if I'm right, that's the category that is targeted at the kind of isn't it 6 to 50 kilowatts?
6 to 50, yeah, absolutely. So I think 6 kilowatts works out to be about 30 square meters. Okay, so yes, you're talking very significant size if you're at the 50 kilowatt scale.
Very good, very good. Yeah, no, it's look, it's an ever-changing market with the way prices are changing every day. So look, it's not something that definitely I think people are really looking seriously at those different grants that are available. So Dinny, if you're available to join us there, I know that you're having some difficulties with your camera this morning, but Dinny's going to be sharing a few slides with us. So Dinny, if you could just unmute yourself even there, and we can roll through the slides then. But just while we're getting Dinny on stream there, Ruth, a question for you there. Well, just the Energy Academy. I have actually logged onto that, and I found it really useful. I thought it was very well laid out. They're all kind of self-directed training courses that are there, and there isn't really much involved in the sign up either.
Great to hear. There are some questions there. Do you want me to answer them, or do you want to leave it till the end?
We'll leave the questions till the end, and we'll run through the questions with you. So Dinny, you're with us now. That's great.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah.
So if you want to proceed through your slides there, Dinny, we can pick up on some questions then afterwards.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so the Dingle Peninsula extends about 48 kilometers out into the sea, and it's pretty unique because it's surrounded by the sea, and that affects all our food down here. So we, my initial, if you can move on to the next slide, Yvonne, please. My initial work started on a Dingle ESB project. I was one of 5 ambassadors chosen to use technology supplied by the ESB for our homes and EV vehicles and so on. As part, when that was coming to the end, there was a community energy mentor course organized here through the Dingle Hub, and I couldn't, I had a big interest in electricity and renewable energy, so wild horses wouldn't keep me away. And I was one of 12 participants. They're on the right-hand side, and one of 12 participants that took part in this community energy mentor course. There was 4 farmers on it. I was the only dairy farmer. And on one particular day, we had a professor, and he, his idea to sort out all the climate problems and the greenhouse gases was to get rid of all the dairy cows. And my God, that didn't go down well with me. I'm 52. I started farming when I was 16. My dad passed away, and a lot of work put into a very small farm here in West Kerry, and from bringing it up to keep 60 dairy cows right now. So I was absolutely very hurt, and the media and the papers and so on at the time, that was back just before the pandemic came in, were it was all negative towards the dairy farmers. We were the problem, and the beef farmers, we were the problem. We were causing all this greenhouse gas, and I was saying, no, we're not, but there's so much we can do. So the following day, we had a few great speakers at this Energy Mentor course. We had Ruth Buggie, who spoke already, and we had Lawrence O'Reilly from the SEAI, and Lawrence was explaining to us how sustainable energy communities could be set up. And I threw the question at Lawrence. I said, look, would it be possible to set up a dairy farmers sustainable energy community? And he kind of looked at me as if I had two heads, but he said, yeah, probably, yeah. So off I went that evening. I'm on the advisory board with Kerry Agri. I spoke to a couple of the lads, a couple of my colleagues on that, the 7 of us in the peninsula. And yeah, they said, look, this is something we have to do. So off I went. We set up a steering committee, 9 great people, representation here from the Dingle Hub, the ESB, our secretary, Katrina Fallon, who we're indebted to, and so many others. We had 3 other dairy farmers, including myself, and our SEAI mentors as well. And we set about our sustainable energy community and started off from there. The next slide, please. Yeah. So 130 members initially, but look, some guys had gone out of milking, and so we're roughly at about 110. I'm chair of the West Kerry Dairy Farmers SEC, and I'm agricultural liaison officer with the Dingle Hub here with the last 4 months as well. We had 2 community energy mentors. We had a Seamus O'Hara initially, and we have Seamus has moved on, and we have Anita O'Connor. Like I say, Dingle Hub representative Deirdre de Vallige, the manager here. We had a lady called Claire McElligott from the ESB, and we decided to. We applied into the SEAI, and we received great funding to do an EMP on our energy usage and energy conservation within the dairy sector. I felt that we energy, electricity, and emissions are very, very closely related, and I was of the view that by reducing our energy consumption, we could really tackle our emissions side of things as well. So we received our funding, and we selected 5 farms to be monitored by our consultant, who were DC6 Technologies from Cork, a local Dingle man here, Barry Bambury works with the company, so that was a plus as well. So 5 farms were chosen, and there was a Watrix device installed. You can see it there on the one of the slides. There was a Watrix device installed, and what that does is it monitors absolutely every bit of electricity that's leaving the switchboard, the fuse board, the ECB board in the plant room on the farm. So with that, the 4 of us as farmers decided we would pay for our own device, and just to make the project more relevant. So there was 9 farms in total were having their electricity usage being monitored. So what that Watrix device is, it's clamped onto all the outlets from the ECB board, and I have an app on my phone. I can actually go in and see exactly what it's costing me to milk the cows, cool the milk, heat the water, the water pump on the farm as well. And it's great information. It's linked back to my electricity supplier, so I can see exactly in euros and cent what everything is costing me on the farm. And that in itself was very educational, absolutely. You would really look at what you do and see, can you reduce things here and there. So our energy master plan kept going through the COVID. It wasn't easy and the pandemic, just because we couldn't get out to some of the farms, but at least all the monitoring equipment was in and we were getting the information back. So our EMP is now completed. DC6 have done a great job. We haven't submitted it yet to the SEAI. We've just got to tidy up a few bits and pieces. Great learnings came out of it. I suppose one big thing was, we were using almost, of 100 dairy farmers surveyed, we were using almost €1 million worth of agri-diesel in 12 months. Now that was 2 years ago. So you can imagine the price of fuel right now, it's almost double. Other things were a pile of the farming community didn't have night rate electricity. And to me, I was amazed with that, because the night rate is usually half of whatever you're paying by day. I suppose the top findings, if you can move on another slide for me, Yvonne, that's the Watchtrix device there, and it's clamped on, and we have the apps on the phone. You can move on again for me, Yvonne, please. So really, what came back with all the monitoring was that heat recovery would have, I have a heat recovery unit in my milking parlour since 2013. We had a heat pump in the house, and I was in the milking one day, and I was saying, it's a fright to see all the heat coming off of this compressor that was making the ice for the milk tank, and it was just going out the door into the atmosphere. That has saved me thousands of euro in water heating over the years, to the point that I'm a 60 dairy cow farmer. I have 500 litres of water every morning at 57 degrees. That's just from taking the heat from the compressor for cooling the milk. The direct expansion, I have an ice bank tank. Direct expansion tanks would be a bit more economical, but the compressor still has to come on to make the gas. So every time a compressor comes on, you pass the gas with water, and in turn it heats the water. So the heat recovery kind of came out as one of the big things, and there's only, out of 110 dairy farmers, there's only about 4 of them on the farms here. So that's one we're going to focus in on. The second thing was the PV panels, and there wasn't much between them really, but we feel, we have the roof space on the farms, and we could create a lot of our own electricity. Okay, you'd say, what will you do with electricity during the day when you're not milking the cows? But you could put that into heating water. You could store it in batteries, or you could put it into ice. And if you put it into ice, you could run that ice water through the plate cooler, and it would be an extra help in a reduction for cooling the milk via electricity. LED lighting, variable speed vacuum pumps, and motors, very important as well, would be a big thing going forward. We did a little bit on the micro hydro. I suppose we're unique here. We have the mountains. There's a pile of water flowing off the mountains. That may be suitable to harness between a group of farmers. Between them, they could definitely get something going. And compared to a wind turbine or something, they're not obtrusive. You capture the water, you put it through a turbine, and you have electricity on the other end. One of the things as well, one of the surveys we did was 25% of 50 surveys that were done, the dwelling house was tied on to the milking. When I say tied on to the milking, the power was leaving the dwelling house, going back out to the milking parlour. So, like, that's something we felt that, you know, could be done. Why couldn't you put enough of PV on the milking parlour outside and send some of that electricity back into the home? So there's an option there as well. And I think Ruth touched on planning the amount of PV you could put up. I think that has changed. I read a little bit about it last night. That has changed. So that's a good incentive as well. We've also done a feasibility study on an anaerobic digester here on the peninsula. And our food festival is kicking off this evening, and tomorrow and Sunday. We have a Ford New Holland biomethane tractor coming. You may have seen it at the ploughing and at other events around the country. We feel that there's a great possibility for an anaerobic digester for the peninsula here. And we could, the newer New Holland tractors can be converted from diesel to biogas. And when we're looking at almost €2 million worth of agri-diesel, and that was for 100 farmers, and there was no stylish contractor involved in that survey. I mean, we feel we have the gas. It would make more sense to me as a farmer, where I can see that we're going to have a month extra storage for slurry and dairy washings, and for all animals going forward, it would make more sense to me for the farming community to get involved in an anaerobic digester and invest in it and take our excess slurry into that, because you can't keep digging holes in the ground for slurry, and number one, it costs too much. And with the anaerobic digester, we'd have our digestate, and that's a fertilizer. It would also cater for offal from a small abattoir here, which would be very important to us. Farm to fork is definitely the way we should be thinking. So our next steps, we held a meeting with the farmers. We had a good attendance there a few weeks back. We had Barry Caslin and Ruth attended. At Geraldine Maloney from the ESB attended as well. And we've secured funding from Kerry Agri and the SEAI to do on-farm audits. And the on-farm audit, there's 90 guys interested in PV, and what the on-farm audit will do is it'll be a 10-hour audit, and it will look at absolutely everything on the farm. We're all dairy farmers, but one farmer might find that heat recovery may be more beneficial to him than PV. Lighting, variable speed vacuum pumps and motors. Also, they will survey the roofs of the buildings, because you don't put PV panels up on a bad roof. They're not going to stay there. We're on the Wild Atlantic Way here, and we have a lot of salt coming in as well. So the brackets for mounting those PV panels, the roofs, everything would have to be in good nick, you know, to deploy them. So, and we're surveying a few little different things as well, a few questions for the farmers, you know, as part of that audit as well. When that's completed, we have buying power. We have a group. I think, if anything, you know, with all the great findings, but we've put the dairy farmers together as a group. I had worked as an AI technician with 12 years and for Jovia Genetics, and I'd have been closely involved with the farming community. They trust me, but like when we have buying power, when we have our audits together, we can go to any PV company in the country and we can request how many kilowatt of PV. We'll know exactly, because we've done our audits, and we'll be able to go out there and tender that out and get a couple of quotes. The cheapest price isn't always the best. That's definitely makes sense as well. As I say, we're playing with extreme winds and quite a lot of salt. It erodes the machinery unbelievably, the sheds. So that's something we would be looking into.
Dinny, we have
Definitely.
about 1 minute left for the presentation. Just want to leave time for questions.
Okay. The Dingle Hub has been very central to everything we've done. They reached out to the farming community, and they've been absolutely great to work with. So yeah, that's me. I think I've got everything in there.
Okay, thanks very much, Dinny. Really useful to have the practical experience, and I have to say, really inspired by the spirit of cooperation down there around the Dingle community, and just the enterprising nature of all of the farmers involved. I had the pleasure of sharing a session at the ploughing last week with Katrina Fallon and the group who are looking at the climate, reducing the climate emissions from agriculture there. So really excellent work going on there. So and of course the Dingle Hub being the fulcrum of a lot of that work. So it is it's a really an inspiration for a lot of communities and regions across the country. We have lots and lots of questions coming through, Barry, and obviously people are thinking about this topic. It's very, very relevant to everybody. But just a question from myself. I actually did choose to go down the solar option here on my own place here, and have to say very positive experience. But I'm looking out the window here and looking at the wind that's blowing, and just wondering, is there an opportunity there for more micro generation through wind, or is that something that's seen as maybe not as economical? Maybe Ruth, if you had any comment on that.
Sure. So we did a microgeneration trial a number of years ago to assess the different types of microgeneration potential that there was. And wind has limited application, it's quite expensive, and it's very intermittent in nature. So it creates a certain number of challenges, and it's possible you can certainly do it. There's planning exemptions in certain areas as well as there is for solar. From a cost benefit analysis, solar certainly seems to come back as the most cost effective option and the least obtrusive. And it has so few moving parts. It doesn't require maintenance, so it's quite reliable in that regard. So I think it's not that it's a no to wind, it's that there's limited locations and people who might be willing to take on the responsibility of quite a significant asset and to maintain it as well.
Barry, we should get to the questions coming in from the audience. A lot of excellent questions coming through there.
Yeah, look, it was two great presentations there, Mark, and great to get that kind of feedback as well in terms of the level of uptake in it in West Kerry. That actually was the first SEC, agricultural SEC in the country. So Ruth mentioned that there's 700 SECs right across the country at the moment, which is fantastic. And that was the first agricultural one. I believe there's a poultry one up in Cavan Monaghan there as well in that region. So it's great to see them getting going, and hopefully we'll see more of them in the agri sector as well. Just Ruth, I'd say that we've seen a lot of investment, in renewable energy generation right across Europe, but policymakers and planners are very frequently met with a lot of resistance from communities who are proposed to maybe infrastructure or development. Do you think that this SEC approach is going to get us over those kind of hurdles?
Thankfully, there's actually research in this space. UCC have been doing a research project called CoWind, and they've actually identified that the presence of an SEC in a location where a project wants to go ahead meets the least amount of resistance. So it's a very positive part of that conversation. So I think one of the early ambitions was very much to depolarize kind of people's view on what projects are there and to lay out the choices. And I think where an SEC has been formed, I think the value proposition of different projects is much clearer. People understand what the opportunities are, what the choices are. So when a project presents itself, they're, I suppose, better equipped to possibly negotiate for what they want from the project as well, and to understand, well, we can ask for different setback distances, we can ask for this, we can engage earlier with the developer. We're a group of voices together that will be heard rather than individuals left alone being afraid of the project. So certainly I think it does help.
You mentioned there, Ruth, as well, that microgeneration is from 6 to 50 kilowatts, and then between 50 kilowatts and 500 kilowatts, there's no scheme really in place there. I'm looking at potentially a small scale generation scheme. Do you think that at the moment the communities is coming in up to 5 megawatts, so between from 500 kilowatts up to 5 megawatts, they support communities to the RES type scheme? It can be a very complicated process for communities to go through. do you think they will be, there might be something for them in the small scale generation?
I think so. I suppose the intent behind small scale generation is to give a fairly reliable income indicator of what would be possible from a project at small scale. So in the current renewable electricity support scheme, in the RES, it's an auction. So you have to bid your price for the future electricity sale. So if things change and you're like very much previous auctions were based on different delivery prices of equipment and material, you don't have an opportunity to change them. The potential of a guaranteed price for your electricity is much more attractive and much easier to go to the bank to get investment. So it's a much more reliable model for communities to be able to leverage a project on. So certainly I think there's a lot more opportunity in that small scale space for communities to participate.
Yeah, Dinny, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, no, just agree with Ruth there. I suppose, you know, just farmers' point of view, look, energy costs have gone through the roof. Very, very lucky here to be in the position we're in, that we're going out now to, we've completed the EMP and we're going out to the audits. But electricity is going to cost the farming, especially the dairy sector, a lot of money over the next period of time. And if we apply these PV panels on our roofs, yes, it's nice to get something that would be going back out to the grid, but like financially, the savings made on farm for heating, on dairy farms for heating water and cooling milk and running out scrapers, I mean, the demand is fierce. So like if we can use 80% of that, which we will, to me, that's very, very important, and we can utilize it.
Question there, Dinny. What is the level of uptake? Well, you've got the energy master plan in place now, so there's recommendations and things that you're doing. What will the level of uptake be? Are people prepared to invest in variable speed drives or LED lighting, or the recommendations that came from the energy master plan?
Yeah, the recommendations for the recovery in PV came out on the top. But personally, I would say, you know, look, we'll all one thing be I walked through milking would be on by there's just so much, you know, that we're farmers, yes, we take animals and but with electricians, like definitely farming community and we're working together because we
Okay, Dinny, I think your signal unfortunately is breaking up quite a lot there.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure. Was that on my side, Mark?
Yeah, no, it is the signal, Dinny, for some reason is not coming through there, unless now it's possible to prioritize whether you have one or two. You have a couple of devices linked through there. But maybe just in the meantime, Ruth, maybe if you could just, is there advice that you could offer to people who are interested in establishing an SEC in their area? How should they go about setting that up, or even finding out more about it?
Sure, it's real easy. In the first instance, we have a map on our website, so I'd ask you to have a look and see if there might already be an SEC in your area. And really coming out of this is to encourage people to participate in an existing SEC. And it's a good way, again, to break down those categories of it's not just farmers on one thing and everyone else in the community and another. Farmers are an integral part of their community, as Dinny has demonstrated. So see if you can join an existing SEC. To set one up, it's a very simple application form on our website. Once you do that, we'll send a mentor to give you a phone call and they'll talk you through the next stages of it. So it's literally 5 minutes. That's all it takes to join the network. And I said, it places no obligation on you to do anything, but it is an expression of an intention to participate, and we'll guide you through the rest. And you can opt out at any stage if it turns out it's not for you, but we really hope it is, and we've had really good success with people who've joined so far.
We might try and go through some of these questions here, Ruth
Sure.
and Dinny. There, if Dinny, you were getting feedback on your line there. I don't know if you have a second device on or not, but there's a lot of feedback coming back when you're unmuted. But there's a question there, Ruth. I have a turbine and produce excess energy, but I'm not allowed to sell to my neighbours. Is that going to change? And there's a kind of a comment there: decrease in transmission distance would be more efficient, wouldn't it?
It certainly is, and a large part of the challenge of community generation, particularly in rural areas, is the grid capacity to take export. So it makes a lot more sense to try and redistribute that electricity locally. My understanding is that ESB networks are looking at what's called private wire and peer-to-peer, which is the opportunity to be able to sell locally so that you can, I suppose, sell electricity to somebody nearby. And also you're not at the moment allowed to supply electricity to anybody privately who's connected to the grid to protect the grid's integrity. So they are looking at different options, and there are good models across Europe for that. It was hoped that a peer-to-peer electricity sharing model would be included in the Dingle project, but it didn't get the go-ahead in the final stages, unfortunately.
Okay, another question there. Just you might explain what RES is. We made the comment about RES, RESS. You might explain that.
Yeah, so RES stands for the New Renewable Electricity Support Scheme. So it is the government's process in which large-scale generators can bid to sell electricity into the grid. So it's for projects from 0.5 megawatt to whatever they want it to be. So it's typically your very large scale projects, and in it there's the commercial category for the very large developers and smaller developers, and then there's the category for communities if they wish to participate and sell into the grid. So it's what powers the grid from a renewable electricity point of view, and then it's sold on to retailers to sell it to customers.
Yeah, so we're seeing all these bigger projects, the likes of the hundreds of acres covered in solar PV, the likes of the big wind turbine projects. They're all covered by the RES support.
Exactly.
Question there about solar for business. Do non-company farms qualify for such grants?
Absolutely. So the Microgen doesn't require any sort of, it's just you have a connection to the electricity system. So it's not specific about what type of business you are. It's your connection and your technical suitability for it. As far as I'm aware, there's no limit.
Yeah. Is Microgen 2 payments, the 13.5 cent, which of course is the clean export premium per kilowatt, on top of the what the CEG or the clean export guarantee? So that's the question. You can't get the two. Sure, you can't, Ruth?
No, you can't. You're in whichever category the size of your project is. So up to 6 is the first one, and over 6 is the second one. You can't bundle them together.
Yeah. Should we cover farm buildings and solar panels before using the land?
There's definitely, depending on the land and depending on the building. So it's an assessment I think each farmer needs to take themselves. It's access to your connection point. So where your power cable's coming in, the cost of connecting back, is the roof of your farm buildings suitable for taking the weight of solar? Are they orientated correctly to make the most of it? Certainly it doesn't make sense to use land that could be used for other purposes for solar unless you don't have another choice. So it's basically an assessment for each landowner to undertake themselves.
There's quite a big question there, Ruth, isn't there, about land use? And I know I saw a post by a farmer on social media there a number of months ago, and he was in a highly productive tillage field harvesting this crop, and he said that in a few months' time this field is going to be covered in solar panels. And I suppose he was asking the question, how does this work with our policy to try and be more self-sufficient as a country in terms of grain production? So, I mean, I thought it was a valid question that he was asking.
It absolutely is, and it's a consideration. And do we create financial instruments that make something more attractive than possibly they should be? And are the long-term needs of the country being considered, and what's the balance of that? So it is certainly very much a complicated question and a complicated answer, and we have to be very careful that we don't create unintended consequences from policy directives to the drive to do renewables. There are certainly better locations they could be put in. And is there a better way to do that? Unfortunately, for large scale projects, the location of the grid is the biggest determining factor, rather than necessarily the suitability of the land.
Dinny, do you have a view on that? Dinny, can you unmute there? Just a question around that land use.
Yeah.
Around that land use and solar.
Yeah. So I suppose definitely under the audit roofs, the quality of the orientation is very, very important. That'll also be part of the audit. I think back about 3 years where I had a visit from the Department of Ag, and I have a bit of peatland that was improved, and there was 2 lads that were sound. They stood at the end of the farmyard and they were looking at the peatland that was drained and improved, and I did my green course back in the 90s, my green cert, and I was granted to turn this from peatland into a grazing area. And these 2 lads told me, you know, you have to keep 5 meters from all the water. And the drains there was you just couldn't fill the amount of drains that's on this this 10-acre part of my farm. And our local GAA jersey has green and yellow stripes, and I said to the lads, look, it'll look like the local GAA jersey if I have to do that. And I feel that there is an option for that type of ground, for the simple reason that it takes a lot to keep busy, and there's no doubt about that. And if we cover some of that land with PV panels, we can also leave the underneath, go back to the biodiversity, and that also help tackle our of some of these large solar farms up the country where the best of land is being covered, and like that, you know, that long, I think you shouldn't cover good farmland. But if you have areas like I have, small areas of peatland, you'd be doing a double. You'd have a double win, because you'd be creating electricity and you would be in the underneath, go back to biodiversity. And I think there's definitely an option there.
Okay, thanks, Dinny. No, a really useful comment. We have about time for one last question, Barry.
Yeah, there's a question there. If you get a TAMS grant, can you sell to the grid? We have an NC7, so that's the ESB networks application process. I suppose I can answer that one, that you can't get TAMS grant and get a teen export premium or a teen export guarantee on top of that. So that would be considered double funding. There's just time for one more maybe question there. You said you can use 80% of the power generated. How much of the total power requirement is produced by solar? Is that for Dinny?
I think, Barry, the line is gone.
Yeah.
I think a reasonable assessment is about a third if you size it correctly, but it depends on what you size it for and what your peak demand is. So it's a really good idea to get a look at your usage profile. You can, if you have a single phase connection, you can buy a little clamp-on meter and you can look at what your electricity profile is, and then size to meet that demand is the best way to kind of consider what the correct sizing is. We don't recommend sizing for export purposes because you're losing about half the value of the electricity when you start exporting it. So it's match your demand as best you can, and then seeing what that looks like versus what a solar curve would look like for your system.
There are some very affordable devices there, I know, for measuring energy usage. So definitely something worth looking at. And look, as you said, Ruth, lots of resources there on the SEAI website and calculators to help people make those decisions. I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last time we're discussing energy on the Signpost webinar. And look, Dinny, once again, I want to say congratulations to you and all of your fellow dairy farmers and of course the Dingle Hub there for getting this project. And I know you're involved in many other projects as well. So we do look forward to hearing and getting updates from those. And Ruth, thanks for joining us and giving us an update on the SEC landscape across the country. And there is a dedicated section on the SEAI website if people want to find out more. So do visit that. And Barry, thank you for helping with the questions. And we do apologize for the sound issues there with Dinny. Maybe the winds might be blowing a bit harder down there today. But look, I'm going to wrap up, and just to remind you that next week's webinar, we're going to have John Muldowney from the Department of Agriculture, who is going to speak about the new acres scheme. So this is a really important scheme for agri-environment, and will be a major part of the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, for the next 5 years. So I think definitely worth tuning in to hear what John has to say about the new scheme. And I just finally want to say thank you to Yvonne Maher for helping us on the technical side today, and also Andy Boland, who is our series producer. A lot of work goes in behind the scenes to organize these talks, and I think it's important that we acknowledge the effort that goes in there. So until then, we hope you have a nice weekend and don't get blown away in the gusty weather. And we'll hope to see you all again. Dinny, we might be down to you and Kerry to see all the good work you're doing down there. So God bless everyone, and we'll see you again.
Bye.